Hello everyone, Russell Wright from ThemeZoom.com. I'd like to welcome you to part 3 of Unmapping the Web. This is an inspired presentation, media rich, inspired also by The Web is Dead by Mr. Chris Anderson, founder of TED, also one of the writers at Wired magazine. In summary, the idea is that the internet is separate from the web, and that the web is anything that's browser based, anything that you require a browser to make connections and click around, and you have all kinds of choices and semantic links and hypertext and links. Whereas the internet doesn't require a browser. For example, Magic Jack or Skype or a direct Facebook application on your iPhone will focus and hold you as a captive audience without ever going off into webland with a browser. And we've been talking about the history of data portability, where it's all going, where it flips inside out. There's a death of the salesman. It's another way of saying who needs salesmen when you're projecting the web out of your body using the sixth sense technology, and the web is kind of ubiquitous on a kind of cloud type beam where everybody is accounted for with spimes and H-spimes, kind of the Minority Report Tom Cruise concept when he walked into the Gap and he was scanned and they knew what he'd purchased previously. All of the point of sale material is carried in his genes, so to speak, DNA. A little scary from the sci-fi perspective, but this is where Dr. Raymond Kurzweil and Jaron Lanier argue about the integration of humanity into our technology. That's what part 3 is about. I find it very interesting that the sixth sense technology and the death of the salesman and the inversion of our body map is really what this conversation is about. Okay, so there's 3 kinds of things we're talking about. Jaron Lanier turned me on. Okay, Jaron Lanier wants to create a web for humans, and Raymond Kurzweil is predicting a web that's built primarily for machines and less humans. Jaron Lanier turned me on to The Body Has a Mind of Its Own by Sandra Blakesley and her son Matthew Blakesley. They've really focused on body maps and the neurosciences, and expanding and extrapolating on the work of Penrose and the body map and which parts of our body are connected in what areas of our brain. Jaron was required to understand that in his work in virtual reality. He is pretty much the father of virtual reality and is really quite a wild character, very human, very interested in the arts, specifically acoustic instruments, and kind of taking MIDI, or all the digital technologies, the digital audio technologies that have been kind of locked in, to the next level, humanizing the web, involving more harmonics, more biophysical oscillations, expanding the web to be more of a biologically integrated, and ultimately maybe even a biological interface, or a biological environment that primarily takes our humanness into consideration. His book, You Are Not a Gadget, is essentially a warning to the world about where we're heading post-iPhone, post-sixth sense, specifically SMIMES and H-spimes. Where are we heading? We're heading, if we're not careful, to a kind of digital Maoism, according to Jaron, that everything is up in the cloud and the beam, but it's not grounded in what's human. He's concerned that our technologies may change our genes more than we really intend, and that we will become less than human, not more, and not merely a different kind of human. It's really worth a read. It's important because this is a guy who knows what he's talking about. He designs conceptual models based on body maps from everything from for everyone from neuroscientists and brain surgeons, technologies and software applications that require body mapping, such as virtually moving an arm to do very, very precise brain incisions with laser scalpels, everything from that to virtual reality. Jaron Lanier was the first person to write and play an entire musical masterpiece inside a virtual space. Very interesting character. You need to read his stuff. Jaron, if you're watching this, which you probably are, super great book. Thank you. Okay. So what is Jaron concerned about? And is he just kind of, being the liberal alarmist? Well, when you start to look at the work of spiral dynamics, which is Dr. Graves' work, if you haven't taken a look at spiral dynamics, look at both schools. There's the school that's kind of Ken Wilber, Wilburianism, Ken Wilber and I think it's Beck, and then there's the original school, and they've always been kind of, anybody watching this who's a part of either school, I'm sorry, but there is a presence of a bit of a feud online between these two. And I teach cognitive dissonance and cognitive consonance research. You like to find arguments. For example, Ken Wilber arguing with, and the kind of dissonance between two different schools. And when schools disagree, this is where you get different fractions. It happens in almost every philosophical tradition in the world where you have a breakaway religion. This is why you have so many denominations of churches. But I like to watch the subtleties of the argument. And I like things to be grounded, okay? And if arguments and controversy comes, from a particular kind of argument, I will usually err on the side of someone who is more grounded than the other person. I'm not going to say who in that argument I choose, but I consider things like body mapping, and my philosophy takes into strong considerations things like sensitive chaos and these kinds of philosophies that take into consideration dynamic recursion, and the spiral aspect is fine, but also has to be grounded in a practical experience. It can't just be ungrounded philosophical rhetoric. So spiral dynamics is something that you need to look at because it's going to come into play in our next talk, and it's going to come into consideration in several things as you move past even theme zoom and start looking at my company, Epimemetics LLC, or even Sue Bell's Semantic Revolution. We'll be able to get into some more radical things that are way outside the scope of the theme zoom semantic technology. They have to do with the future of the future of motivation, the future of pleasure, and the future of imagination. Okay, this is heavy stuff, exciting, and as far as I know, we're the only one writing about it quite in this way. So this is my passion, one of the things that I'm working on. Raymond Kurzweil wrote a book called The Singularity is Near. He envisions a world by 2045 where man has merged with his machines. So instead of unmapping, the web unmapping our bodies from these giant, 5-story building computers, cubicle offices at your, help centers, desktops, once we've unmapped ourselves finally to the iPhone and then turned inside out, if you haven't watched our previous videos on the Sixth Sense technology, which is available to watch on TED, where the internet is projected out of your body. Raymond Kurzweil is saying that's not the end of it. What will happen is things will get smaller and smaller. Eventually, the Bluetooth is an example of that. It wasn't enough to have a cell phone because there's the toxic whatever. You have to get something small to put in your ear so that it's less distraction, and it's just more convenient. It reminds me of a Stargate episode where they landed on a planet and everybody's hooked directly into Google, essentially, and it's a neural interface. If you think that's far off, think again, because we do have neural interface action and activity happening. This is one of the reasons Geron is so adamant about making sure we consider body maps and human beings in the development of our machine and our technologies, because neural interfacing is already happening and he's a part of all of that stuff. And there's people, paraplegics, who are moving a mouse around on the screen. They're actually able to move things with their thoughts. A friend of mine, Dan Winter, helped develop technology that allows a person to move stuff on the screen just by changing their heartbeat or changing their brainwaves. This stuff is here now and getting quite profound and quite refined. The interesting thing is that Raymond Kurzweil scared a lot of people because he's saying by 2045 we're going to integrate with our machines. Sue Bell, theme zoom architect Sue Bell, and myself have argued about this as well. She believes that nanotechnology is inevitable and that will begin to interface with our neurons. And if you go to TED.com and start reading and watching the work of Sebastian Sung, he's created the science of connectomes, which are the smallest unit of connection in a neural network. We don't have enough technology to map. We don't have enough of an advanced algorithm or a comprehensive enough technology to map all the connectomes in the human brain. If we did, we would be able, there might even be the possibility that immortality could exist on a certain sense, which is what Raymond Kurzweil is arguing in The Singularity is Near. And it's really quite shocking because Sebastian Sung, right there in front of a room full of TED investors, essentially said, we have to prove the cybernetics guys, the guys who are freezing their body for 100 grand and waiting for the future to revive their bodies and their brains. Using connectomes, we could actually prove whether freezing your body or not is actually a potential immortal kind of step. In that sense, he's saying that if the connectomes in your brain don't work after being frozen, then the idea that you can be frozen can be thrown out. And they're actually going to test whether or not later on your brain, or at least your connectomes matrix, which include your memories and your constructs, could be kind of downloaded into a machine even after your body was frozen. I thought all of that was rubbish until I started reading the science. And this is not pseudoscience, this is hardcore math. And he's proposing to get the money to invest whether or not immortality is possible via a neuro connectome imprint. So do see the work of Sebastian Sung. Now, this validates all of Raymond Kurzweil's work, and it's some pretty heavy-duty stuff. So we're not going to get too much into this there. I just wanted you to know the argument between Raymond Kurzweil and Geron is like, Geron is saying, let's pay attention to body maps, guys. Let's keep in mind how the human body works. Your body is not separate from your mind. That's a quasi-religious misnomer. In fact, the work of Dr. Gregory Burns, who is the author of Iconoclast and his previous book, Satisfaction, is profoundly clear on the nature of dopamine as a driver, which we're going to talk about in the next video. And dopamine is profoundly, participates deeply in the evolutionary processes of keeping your body mapped and keeping you motivated through body awareness. And this is why Parkinson's disease, your body gets shaky, because dopamine, which is also a huge part of motivation and novelty seeking, is also a part of stability and body motor. Therefore, when you kind of map yourself into this, like we talked about down here, these old mainframe dinosaurs, or you're sitting in front of a computer like at a cubicle and you're kind of stuck in cubicle land, your body starts changing. That's why you see the comic strips, The Evolution of Man. One of my yoga teachers has The Evolution of Man, where we were crawling, climbing, we were up, and then now we've hunched back over and we lost our posture. When you're mapped onto a computer, it's been shown that people are not happy. And then you have the electromagnetic fields, especially the digital electronic pulse fields, which we know affect the cellular metabolism and leaches minerals from the body. There's all these things that are happening, and our technology has changed us. Geron's telling us to watch the body maps, watch the minerals, watch the technologies and how they affect us, and design better tools that are for humans, not tools that are designed to perpetuate more technology. Raymond Kurzweil is saying, our data compression rate is at this percentage, I've done the math, this and that. Eventually, human beings are going to use nanotechnology to interface their connectomes. Don't try to stop it. It's inevitable, and eventually everybody is going to be uploaded to the cloud or the beam. Their connectomes could even be up in some kind of over computer soul. I used to think it was nonsense until I started looking at the connectome thing. The crazy thing about it is that, in my philosophy, that's really not immortality. It's a digital mirroring of a pattern, and yet, ratio and size, you get into the very ancient philosophic argument about that. So here's the cognitive dissonance between Jaron Lanier and Raymond Kurzweil. What do you believe? Feel free to leave your comments below. We're going to talk about the integration on this and the beam and the cloud. I will say this, the beam and the cloud, any philosophy or ideology that is not grounded, and when I say grounded, grounded means very many things, means grounded in reality, connected to the earth, or takes into account all of the harmonics and all of the scalar resonant fields from the base, which is the Schumann Hertz resonance of the earth, to the very high gravitational fields of light and sound on the electromagnetic spectrum. If something doesn't integrate one of those pieces, it's missing something. So the idea of having a beam and a cloud just kind of sitting up there where everybody's connectomes kind of exist in this free range in some kind of oversoul, it's just kind of like the Matrix. It's got to have a battery. It's plugged into something. It's got to be grounded. That's what batteries are all about. It's a huge fun conversation. We're not going to get into it right now. I'm going to talk to you in just a couple of minutes. The next diagram you're going to see is one of the heaviest diagrams I've ever created. It may take you quite a while to fully grok what it's saying, but if you do, you'll be able to plan your life and see your motivations, your creativity, and your even the future of pleasure in a new way. I'll see you on video 4, still part of Unmapping the Web, but I'm calling it the future of motivation and the future of pleasure.